The old king was dying when he made the decision that would destroy his family. The entire kingdom stood inside the palace courtyard as servants carried him to the throne one final time. His hands shook, his breathing was weak, yet his voice carried across the crowd. "My successor is Prince Obiora, the educated prince." The crowd erupted with cheers, nobles smiled, scholars applauded, even foreign visitors nodded in approval. But one person did not celebrate. Prince Chika laughed. It was not a joyful laugh, it was short, strange, almost bitter. The cheering stopped. For a moment, the entire courtyard fell silent. The dying king looked at his younger son, and something close to fear passed across his face. Then he quickly looked away. Nobody understood what had just happened. 3 days later, the king was dead, and before his body was even buried, a rumor began spreading through the kingdom. The king had not wanted to choose Obiora. Someone had forced his hand. Nobody knew if the rumor was true, but as weeks turned into months, more secrets began surfacing. A missing royal document, a hidden meeting in the forest, a promise made years earlier that nobody could explain. Soon the people of Umadara stopped asking who inherited the throne. They began asking a far more dangerous question. What did the king discover about his sons before he died? Because whatever the answer was, he had taken most of it to the grave with him. The kingdom of Umadara had never doubted Prince Obiora. From childhood, he had been the son everyone pointed to with pride. He spoke the language of scholars, studied in distant lands, and returned with ideas that impressed nobles and merchants alike. When he walked through the marketplace, people whispered, "That is the future king." Prince Chika inspired a different reaction. He owned no impressive certificates. He spent his days among farmers, hunters, and traders. While Obiora debated policy inside palace halls, Chika sat beneath village trees, listening to ordinary people complain about taxes, harvests, and family disputes. Yet strange rumors followed him. Several times each month, he disappeared after sunset. No guards accompanied him. No servants knew where he went. When questioned, he always smiled and changed the subject. The rumors eventually reached the old king, and for the first time, he ordered royal spies to follow his own son. What they discovered would leave the king awake for 3 straight nights. The spies returned just before dawn. Their faces were pale. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The king dismissed everyone from the room and locked the doors himself. "Tell me exactly what you saw." The oldest spy swallowed hard. "We followed Prince Chika into the forest, Your Majesty." The king nodded. "And?" "He met with men." "What men?" The spy hesitated. "Former rebels." The king's expression darkened. These were not ordinary men. Years earlier, they had fought against the crown. Some had lost sons, brothers, and fathers during the conflict. Officially, they had surrendered. Officially. "What did they discuss?" the king asked. "We could not hear everything." "Then tell me what you heard." The room became silent. Finally, the spy spoke. "We heard one of them say, 'The kingdom will never survive after the old king dies.'" The king slowly stood from his chair. That night, sleep abandoned him, because for the first time in 40 years, he began to fear that the greatest threat to his kingdom might be living inside his own family. The next morning, the king summoned Prince Chika to the palace. No advisors, no guards, no witnesses, only father and son. For several moments, neither spoke. Then the king asked the question directly. "Why are you meeting with rebels?" Chika did not look surprised. Instead, he seemed almost relieved. "You sent men to follow me." I asked a question. Chika stared out the window toward the distant hills. "Those men are angry, father." "They should be. Angry men can become dangerous." The king's eyes narrowed. "So you admit it." "I admit they trust me." The answer settled heavily between them. The king expected denial. Instead, Chika seemed completely comfortable. "What exactly are you planning?" the king asked. For the first time, Chika looked directly at him. "That depends on what happens after you die." The king felt a chill crawl through his chest, because it was not a threat. It was something far worse. It sounded like a warning, and warnings usually meant the danger had already begun. For weeks, the king could not stop thinking about Chika's words. It sounded like a warning, but a warning about what? Meanwhile, preparations for the succession continued. Obiora was already acting like a future king. He met with nobles, reviewed trade agreements, and entertained foreign envoys who traveled from distant kingdoms to congratulate him in advance. The more the king watched him, the more troubled he became. Obiora was brilliant, perhaps too brilliant. One evening, an elderly palace accountant requested a secret audience. The old man arrived trembling. "I have served this palace for 32 years, he said. "I cannot die carrying this." Then he placed a small leather ledger before the king. Inside were records of enormous payments, gold, land, political favors, all linked to powerful nobles. Every payment led back to one name, Prince Obiora. The king read the pages twice, then a third time. His hands began to shake. The amounts were large enough to influence the next succession vote, large enough to buy loyalty, large enough to place a crown on someone's head. For the first time, the king wondered whether his educated son truly wanted to serve the kingdom, or whether he simply wanted power. And suddenly, choosing a successor no longer felt difficult. It felt impossible. The king ordered a quiet investigation. No arrests, no accusations. No one was to know. For nearly 2 months, trusted men followed the trail left by the ledger. When their report finally arrived, the truth was worse than the king expected. The money was real. The payments were real. The nobles had indeed received gifts, but the purpose was not what the king imagined. Obiora had not been buying support, he had been buying silence. The king immediately summoned him. The prince arrived before sunset. The ledger was already waiting on the table. Obiora saw it and froze. For the first time in his life, he looked afraid. "What is this?" the king demanded. A long silence followed. Then Obiora lowered his head. "The kingdom is in danger." The king's anger faded into confusion. What danger? Obiora hesitated. "If I tell you, people will die." The room became very still. The king had expected excuses. He had expected lies. Instead, he was looking at a son carrying a burden that seemed heavier than the crown itself. "Tell me." Obiora's voice dropped to a whisper. "The rebels are not preparing to attack the kingdom." The king frowned. "Then what are they planning?" Obiora looked directly into his father's eyes. "They are preparing to reveal a secret that could destroy our family forever." The king stared at his son. For several seconds, he could not speak. What secret? Obiora walked to the window and looked out at the kingdom below. The marketplace, the palace walls, the people who believed they knew their royal family. They believed Chika and I are brothers. The king's face hardened. "You speak as though that is not true." Obiora closed his eyes. "It isn't." The words struck the room like thunder. The king slowly rose from his chair. Years earlier, before Obiora's birth, the queen had disappeared for several months during a violent border war. The official story was that she had been hidden for her safety. Only a handful of people knew the truth, and every one of them was supposed to be dead. "Who told you this?" the king asked. "The rebels." "How?" "They found letters." The king felt the blood drain from his face. Letters. The one thing he had spent 25 years trying to destroy. Obiora reached into his robe and produced a folded document. The letters say my real father was not a king. The king's hands trembled. The letters say he was the leader of the rebellion. Silence swallowed the room. At that moment, the king finally understood why the rebels had been waiting. They did not want the throne. They wanted the truth. And if that truth reached the kingdom, the crown itself might not survive. 3 days later, the king died. The secret died with him, or so everyone believed. The kingdom buried its ruler with full honors, and before the mourning period ended, Prince Obiora was crowned king. The celebration was magnificent. Drums echoed across Umadara. Nobles feasted. Foreign rulers sent gifts. The people cheered. But not everyone was celebrating. Far beyond the capital, hidden among the hills, copies of the letters had already begun circulating. 1 month after the coronation, the first rumors appeared. By the 3rd month, the rumors had become accusations. By the 6th month, they had become a movement. The king is not the king's son. The throne belongs to no one. The royal family has lied for 25 years. The kingdom divided almost overnight. Some defended Obiora. Others demanded his removal. Villages argued. Families stopped speaking to one another. Old friendships collapsed. And through all of it, Chika remained strangely silent. That silence frightened Obiora more than the rebellion itself, because his brother knew the truth. His brother knew the kingdom was tearing itself apart, yet he refused to choose a side. Then, on a cold evening, Chika finally sent a message to the palace. It contained only 7 words: "Meet me where mother died, alone." And for the first time since becoming king, Obiora felt genuine fear. The place where their mother died was a forgotten shrine deep inside the forest. No guards, no servants, no witnesses, exactly as Chika requested. Obiora arrived before midnight and found his brother standing beside a crumbling stone altar swallowed by vines and darkness. For a while, neither man spoke. Then Chika broke the silence. Father lied to both of us. Obiora's jaw tightened. He was protecting the kingdom. No, Chika said quietly. He was protecting himself. The words hit harder than any accusation. Chika stepped forward and handed him a weathered bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside were more letters, far older than the ones the rebels had found. Letters written by their mother. Obiora's hands shook as he read. Each page revealed a different truth. The queen had never been kidnapped during the border war. She had gone willingly, and the rebel leader was not her captor. He was the man she loved. Obiora looked up in disbelief. This cannot be true. It is. There must be more. There is. Chika's voice lowered. The rebels aren't spreading the letters because of you. Obiora froze. For years he had believed he was the target, the reason for the rebellion, the center of the conspiracy. Then Chika revealed the final truth. They're spreading them because Mother was murdered. The forest suddenly felt colder, and for the first time, both brothers realized the rebellion had never been about the throne. It was about revenge. For a long time, neither brother spoke. The forest seemed to hold its breath around them. Finally, Obiora looked down at the letters again. If Mother was murdered, who did it? Chika's eyes did not leave the altar. I spent 7 years trying to answer that question. Obiora felt another chill. 7 years. That was why Chika disappeared at night. That was why he met former rebels. That was why he never fought for the throne. He had never been chasing power. He had been chasing the truth. Who killed her? Obiora repeated. Chika slowly reached into his robe and removed a small bronze seal, the royal seal of the late chief minister Eze. Obiora recognized it immediately. His stomach tightened. Eze had been one of their father's most trusted advisors, a man who served the crown for nearly 30 years. He ordered it, Chika said. Why? Because father was prepared to abandon the throne. Silence. Obiora stared at him. What? The letters changed everything. Father discovered the truth about Mother. He planned to leave the crown and recognize her relationship with the rebel leader. The words felt impossible, but Eze feared the kingdom would collapse. So he killed her? Chika nodded slowly. No, he did something worse. Obiora frowned. What could be worse than murder? Chika looked directly at his brother. He convinced father to sacrifice her for the kingdom, and in that terrible moment, Obiora finally understood the secret that had haunted their family for decades. The greatest betrayal had never come from the rebels. It had come from the throne itself. The truth exploded across the kingdom within weeks. The letters were revealed. The confession of Chief Minister Eze was found, and the people learned what their beloved king had done. Some called him a protector, others called him a coward. The kingdom fractured. Villages chose sides. Old allies became enemies. Then Obiora did something nobody expected. He stood before the entire kingdom and removed the crown. My father sacrificed the woman he loved to save this throne, he said. I will not sacrifice this kingdom to save it. Gasps spread through the crowd. Obiora handed the crown to Chika. But Chika refused. The kingdom has lost enough because of one man's choice, he replied. I will not make another alone. Instead, the brothers dissolved the old royal council and created a new one where power would be shared. Peace slowly returned, but the cost remained. Their father was remembered not as a hero or a villain, but as a man whose greatest decision destroyed the very family he was trying to protect. And